Look at the backyard, Chloe. How can you see that mess and feel nothing? You're a failure, as Benjamin's wife, completely oblivious to my poor health. My mother-in-law Abigail shot a cold glance at the overgrown weeds in the garden. So she's telling me to clean up the yard. But there's no way I can pull weeds in my current state. I feel like I might collapse at any moment. I silently glanced at my husband, Benjamin, but as expected, he pretended not to notice. I guess I better move before she says anything else. Forcing myself, I dragged my weak body outside. Mom, are you okay? You look really pale. My daughter Amelia rushed over and steadied me as I swayed on my feet. Thank you, Amelia. That was all I could manage to say. Mom, let me do it. You should sit down and rest. Amelia took the sickle from my hands and, with her slender frame, started cutting the weeds with all her might. I felt like a failure as a mom. My body won't cooperate, and my mind feels just as useless. Then I heard something that froze me in place. I wish Chloe and Amelia would just disappear. Absolutely, they're useless and only a burden. I hope they never come back. From inside the house, Abigail and Benjamin's voices rang out clear and cutting, shattering me. Why would they say such cruel things about us? I wanted to vanish on the spot. Just then, as I crouched facing Amelia, she stood up, with her back to me. In her hand was the sickle, and her head was bowed at an unnatural angle, her neck bent nearly 90 degrees. Large tears fell from her face, hitting the ground in silence. She raised the sickle high above her head, and in a flash of panic, I screamed, Amelia. My name is Chloe, a 40-year-old housewife. Mom, look, I got second place in my grade on the test last week. Bursting through the door after school, my 14-year-old daughter Amelia ran into the kitchen, her face lit with a beaming smile. That's amazing. You've been working so hard on your studies. Of course, I'm going to be a doctor one day. I want to study even harder and become a doctor like Dr. Ella. Amelia is easygoing, but has a quiet strength when it comes to pursuing her dreams. Benjamin and I, on the other hand, casually chose liberal arts majors in college and entered jobs without any real passion. That's why Amelia, with her clear ambitions and determination even as a middle schooler, shines so brightly in my eyes. I glanced over at her as she scooped a steaming spoonful of soup into her mouth. Wait, that's hot. Ah, it's so hot, but it's delicious. Even with tears in her eyes from the heat, she smiled and complimented the taste, making me laugh despite myself. I'm going to finish my homework now. I watched her slender but determined back as she walked to her room, a soft smile on my face. I married Benjamin at 25 after meeting him at work. The following year, Amelia was born. She was a little smaller than other babies her age, and as she grew, her small size and youthful demeanor stood out compared to her peers, making me worry at times. But Amelia never seemed to notice or care. She was carefree and confident, and I decided to trust in her strength. Today, my friend and I had a contest to see who could find the prettiest flower. This Sunday, we're meeting at the park next to the preschool at 10 a.m. Every time Amelia talked about her friends, it filled me with joy. She wasn't picky about food and loved playing outside, which reassured Benjamin and me immensely. Even in elementary school, Amelia was surrounded by friends and enjoyed her time at school. But something changed when she had just turned 9. Amelia, are you feeling okay? I'm just so tired. Amelia, who used to finish her breakfast every morning without fail, began leaving her meals unfinished and hesitating to go to school. She didn't have a fever, but even the effort of commuting to school seemed to exhaust her, and we received several calls to pick her up during the school day. I wondered if something had happened at school. Was she having trouble with her friends? Worried, I consulted her teacher, who mentioned that even her classmates were concerned about her. On the teacher's recommendation, we visited the doctor and received shocking news. Amelia had leukemia. Why Amelia? She had been so full of life. Why didn't I take her to the doctor sooner? Was it her diet? As a mom, had I failed to notice the signs? These regrets consumed me every single day. Mom, did you know Dr. Ella lived in Germany? She even taught me some German words. Sensing my guilt and sadness, Amelia tried to keep her spirits bright. Dr. Ella, Amelia's oncologist, was a positive and compassionate woman with a radiant smile. Amelia grew to trust her completely, even when chemotherapy took a toll on her body and changed her appearance. Amelia never complained. Last night, I felt so nauseous I couldn't sleep, but Dr. Ella stayed with me, rubbing my back and telling me fun stories. I want to be kind like her when I grow up. Dr. Ella explained Amelia's illness and treatment in ways she could understand, always with patience and warmth. Because of her, Amelia endured the painful treatments and emerged stronger. Now Amelia's leukemia is in remission, and she can live a normal life again. Having experienced her illness, Amelia is now working hard toward her goal of becoming a doctor, inspired by the kindness of Dr. Ella. I found myself picking up a tutoring enrollment form stuck on the refrigerator. Amelia hoped to attend a high school with a high acceptance rate for medical schools to help her achieve her dream of becoming a doctor. However, a friend had told me that getting into that school would be difficult without additional tutoring. I had Amelia take a trial test, and while she had mastered textbook-level questions, she struggled with the advanced ones. If you want to attend that school, I really think tutoring would help. I had suggested tutoring to Amelia several times, but Amelia would flip through the brochures and immediately shake her head. Mom, tutoring is expensive. I don't want to use so much money just on me. It's okay, I'll try my best on my own. Besides, you should treat yourself sometimes. It seemed Amelia was aware of our financial struggles. When Amelia got sick, I left my job of 12 years to take care of her. After remission, I only worked part-time 3 days a week, while Benjamin supported us financially. Benjamin didn't have a low income, but the household money I received from him was just $1K a month, while Benjamin covered the rent. By the time I paid for groceries and utilities, there was almost nothing left. I managed the shortfall with my own income. I want to send Amelia to tutoring, but could we increase the household budget a bit? I had brought up tutoring with Benjamin before, but he wouldn't take it seriously. She doesn't need tutoring yet. She wants to go to a school in the next town to pursue her dream of becoming a doctor. Amelia is working so hard. I want to do everything I can for her. For example, we could reconsider the money we send to Abigail. What? Benjamin's mood suddenly soured, and he glared at me. Do you have any idea how much my mom has done for us? You're such an ungrateful person. No, that's not what I mean. Abigail isn't exactly struggling financially, and I just think we should support Amelia's dreams. She can go to whatever school she gets into. Plenty of people make it to medical school without going to that one. It all depends on her own effort. Benjamin sighed deeply and walked out of the living room. I guess it's hopeless. Along with the frustration of his inability to support Amelia's dreams, I started to feel resigned. The money Benjamin sends to Abigail, which had come up in the conversation earlier, is $2K every month. Meanwhile, the household allowance I receive is $1K. Abigail gets enough social security to live on, so her lifestyle should be more than sufficient with that. There's something unsettling about this arrangement, but I've forced myself to ignore it. We're going on a trip next month. I booked a luxury hotel that Mom said she wanted to visit. Since it's her birthday, we'll celebrate at the hotel's restaurant. At first, I thought Benjamin was a kind and caring family man. But when that devotion extended to ignoring Amelia and me, I began to see him as nothing more than a mama's boy. I could tolerate it if Abigail were a good person, but Benjamin is such a thoughtful son. I'll be scrutinizing whether you're worthy of him. That's what Abigail told me during a family meeting. I dismissed it at the time, thinking it was a typical comment, but now I realize how abnormal it was. If only I had scrutinized this family more carefully back then. That thought lingers as a regret. There's one thing Abigail said that I'll never forgive. It happened while Amelia was hospitalized for her illness. When children get sick, it's because of their parents. Have you been neglecting your home while focusing too much on work? Whenever Abigail visited the hospital, she'd pull me aside to make such snide remarks. If it were only directed at me, I could take it, but one day, she crossed a line. Benjamin said his contributions to me would be reduced because of Amelia's medical expenses. What? How could she bring this up now? I was too stunned to speak. Unfazed, Abigail continued as if talking to herself. Amelia is such an ungrateful child. Enough. Before I knew it, I was confronting Abigail, my voice trembling as I glared at her. What? You're proving you're not fit to be Benjamin's wife. With that, Abigail left, feigning composure. I hoped Amelia had not heard. Peeking into the hospital room, I saw her turned away, sleeping. Thankfully, she hadn't heard those cruel words. At least, that's what I thought at the time. But now, seeing Amelia's resolute refusal to enroll in tutoring, I can't help but wonder if Abigail's words had reached her after all. My chest tightens at the thought. I can't rely on Benjamin. I'll increase my income myself. I will fully support Amelia's dreams. I gripped the tutoring enrollment form tightly. That very evening, I began searching for a job within a 30-minute commute with good pay. I worried whether I could find such ideal conditions at my age, but I stayed persistent, sitting in front of my computer every day. After a month of searching, one job listing caught my eye. It was for a contract position at a real estate company. The office was a 20-minute bus ride from home, and the pay was decent. What attracted me the most, however, was seeing the executive director's name on the company's website, Henry Jones. I didn't know him personally. However, my first boss at my initial job, who mentored me, was named Oliver Jones. Something about seeing the same last name made me feel a sense of familiarity, or even fate. Oliver had taught me everything I knew about the job. Thanks to his guidance, I learned how to work efficiently. When I left the job to care for Amelia, he gave me his personal number, saying, "If you ever need anything, call me. I'll always be your boss." I never ended up contacting him, but his words remained a source of strength for me. Drawn to the coincidence of another Mr. Jones, I sent my resume to the company. After an interview, I was hired. "Amelia, I've decided to start working full-time next month. My salary will double, so you don't have to worry about money anymore." I handed Amelia the completed tutoring enrollment form. I noticed a brief flicker of hesitation cross Amelia's surprised face. "Watching you work so hard inspired me, Amelia. I thought it was time for me to try something new too. I'm so excited now. Let's work hard together." "Thank you, Mom. Let's do it together." Amelia's face finally lit up with joy. And so began our new life, with no overtime at my job. I could always take Amelia to and from tutoring. Mom, did you know that sunflower seeds are arranged in a perfect pattern? It's called the Fibonacci sequence. Math is so interesting. Today, I attended a presentation about introducing a new system at work. It became a daily habit for us to share the new things we had learned. The time spent talking with Amelia in the car became the highlight of my day. Looking back, those were some of the most vibrant days for us. Perhaps seeing us so content annoyed Benjamin, as he started becoming increasingly irritable. However, Amelia and I were too busy adjusting to our new environments to bother with Benjamin's childish antics. This meal again. I'm so sick of it. I'm sorry. Tomorrow I'll make your favorite meatloaf. I had learned how to deftly deflect Benjamin's complaints. 3 months into my job, just as Amelia and I were getting used to this routine, tragedy struck. My father-in-law Lucas had passed away suddenly in a car accident. Abigail, devastated by the loss, called Benjamin every night, overwhelmed with grief. Listen, both of you, I've made a decision. Mom is going to move in with us. I'm going to pick her up this weekend. Out of concern for Abigail, Benjamin unilaterally decided on the arrangement. What? So suddenly? Are you going to ignore Mom again? That's not it. If she's moving in, we'll need to clear space for her things. We need to prepare. Moving in together wasn't a decision that should have been made so casually, but Benjamin wouldn't listen to a word I said. Since I worked during the week, there wasn't much time to prepare. In the end, Abigail moved in without us being ready. This place isn't even tidied up. Are you pretending to work to avoid doing house chores? I won't. I shouldn't need your approval. Though that thought lingered in my mind, I feared complicating our long-term cohabitation, and had no choice but to humble myself before her. Taking advantage of this, Abigail and Benjamin only grew bolder. I heard from Benjamin, "You barely clean, and only cook simple meals these days." Benjamin is too kind to say anything, but I won't tolerate it. Breakfast must always include 2 homemade dishes. Dinner must consist of a main course and at least 2 side dishes. The bed sheets must be washed every 3 days, and the entire house must be vacuumed daily. She kept piling on unreasonable demands. If you can't manage this, you should quit your job. It's not like you're irreplaceable. If I quit my job, I'd have to spend all day in the same space as Abigail. That was the one thing I absolutely couldn't bear. So I resolved to wake up even earlier to complete the tasks Abigail assigned. What Abigail didn't know, however, was that Benjamin only drank coffee for breakfast. She also didn't know that Benjamin disliked having anyone clean his room without his permission, so he had always cleaned it himself, a rule we agreed on when we first got married. Can you talk to Abigail for me? Since Abigail wouldn't listen to me about the breakfast or cleaning, I asked Benjamin to step in, but he feigned ignorance. Was it that he believed Abigail's words were absolute, or that he simply didn't want to deal with the tension between us? Either way, Benjamin was no help, completely submissive to Abigail's will. It's morning already. Even if I was still exhausted, the morning always came. In the still dark house, I turned on the kitchen light and began preparing breakfast and dinner. At some point, Amelia started waking up early too. "Good morning, Mom. Want me to cut this?" Rubbing her sleepy eyes, Amelia would join me in the kitchen, as if it were the most natural thing. "You woke up early, use the time for yourself." Honestly, just having Amelia nearby was a comfort. But at the same time, I felt guilty for having her, a student preparing for exams, help me like this. Abigail's demands, however, only escalated. "You know I told you to buy seasonings from that store, right?" Our family has always been used to that taste. I didn't have time to go, so I thought this would work until the weekend. Don't be careless. And the bed sheets, you didn't wash them yesterday, did you? The weather was bad, so then use the dryer. It's your lack of cleanliness that made Amelia sick, isn't it? Abigail always said whatever she pleased. I needed a break. After finishing the cleaning and sitting down in front of the fridge late at night, I must have fallen asleep from sheer exhaustion. Mom. When I opened my eyes, Amelia was peering at me with a worried expression. Oh, sorry, I just closed my eyes for a second and must have dozed off. Mom, I want to quit tutoring. What? Why? She had always said she enjoyed tutoring. Amelia stayed silent for a moment before looking straight at me and saying, I want to help you, Mom. You're more important than tutoring. I pulled Amelia into an embrace. To think she had been so deeply worried. I felt both ashamed of my inadequacies and resolute that I needed to change our living situation. On my first day off in weeks, I could barely stand, but I still prepared breakfast as usual before anyone else woke up. Everyone's still asleep. It's a day off after all. Maybe I can take a short break before they wake up. I lay down on the sofa for a moment. Chloe, how lazy to lounge around first thing in the morning. Grandma, Mom's tired. Let her rest. I wasn't sure how much time had passed. In the distance, I could hear Abigail and Amelia's voices. When I opened my eyes, Abigail was standing over me, looking down at me. I'm sorry. I scrambled to get up, clutching my aching head. Look at the garden. How can you see that and feel nothing? You're a failure, as Benjamin's wife. Unaware of how unwell I was, Abigail cast a cold gaze at the overgrown weeds in the garden. So she wants me to clean the garden. But there was no way I could manage that in my current state. I felt like I might collapse any moment. I looked silently at Benjamin, but as expected, he avoided my gaze. I needed to act before she said something else. Forcing my body to move, I headed into the garden. Mom, are you okay? You don't look well. Amelia rushed over and supported me. Thank you, Amelia. I could barely manage those words. The summer weeds had grown thick and tough. Between my poor health and the stubborn plants, even using a sickle, I couldn't cut them effectively. Mom, I'll do it. Sit down and rest. Amelia took the sickle from me and started cutting the weeds with her slender frame, giving it her all. I felt like such a failure as a mom. My body couldn't keep up, and my mind felt just as weak. I felt pathetic for being so helpless when Amelia suddenly murmured, Mom, are you staying married because of me? What? I looked up to see Amelia gazing at me with a face on the verge of tears. If you keep living like this, you're going to break down. Why is Grandma so mean? Why doesn't Dad ever help you? This isn't what family is supposed to do, right? Her voice was trembling. I'll quit tutoring. I'll go to the local high school instead. I can still achieve my dreams. So, Mom, please don't stay married for me. I realized how much I had pushed my child, still just a student, preparing for high school entrance exams, to the breaking point, as I struggled to find the words to respond. Benjamin and Abigail's voices drifted out from the house. By the way, how's Evelyn these days? Evelyn. She's crazy about me. I love how she's so devoted. Were they openly discussing an affair? And with Abigail's approval, Amelia and I exchanged looks of disbelief. What brought you two together? We started working together, and just clicked. Then, as we talked more, we found out we went to the same high school. Of course, she's 20 years younger than me, but after she learned we shared a high school, she started warming up to me right away. Hearing Benjamin reminisce about Evelyn so fondly made me feel sick. but Amelia's disgust was even more obvious from her expression. The two continued their conversation, oblivious to the fact that their voices carried outside. Evelyn. Where have I heard that name before? No, it must be my imagination. As I mulled over my irritation, I heard words that left me frozen. I wish Chloe and Amelia would just disappear. Then I could start a new life with Evelyn. Exactly. They're useless and just a waste of money. I hope they never come back. The sound of their mocking laughter rang in my ears, leaving me paralyzed. Why would they say something so cruel? I felt an overwhelming urge to vanish. Just then, Amelia, who had been crouching across from me, stood up and turned her back to me. In her hand was the sickle. She bowed her head at an unnatural 90-degree angle, tears dripping onto the ground. She raised the sickle high above her head, and in a panic, I screamed, "Amelia!" I thought for a moment she was about to harm herself, but my scream was drowned out by the sound of glass shattering. The sickle Amelia had held flew straight into the living room where Abigail and Benjamin were, smashing into the window. The glass cracked, scattering shards everywhere. "What are you doing? Are you trying to hurt someone?" The two of them turned red with anger, shouting at Amelia. But Amelia ignored them entirely. Instead, her furious voice rang out, "Enough, Dad and Grandma. You're both crazy. You bully Mom and say horrible things. I don't want to live in this house anymore." I realized something as I watched Amelia cry and scream so intensely it seemed her voice might tear her throat. Amelia, who had endured even the most painful treatments during her illness without complaint, was now expressing her emotions so openly. I had felt my own limits being tested for a while, but I came to understand that Amelia had been pushed even further. The only reason I had been able to endure the cruelty of those two was because Amelia had been there, standing by me, but I realized she had been carrying immense stress herself. I need to be stronger. I need to protect Amelia. With that resolve, I stood up and pulled Amelia into an embrace. "Amelia, I'm so sorry. Please wait here for a moment." I silently walked into the house and packed only the bare essentials. Then I took the trembling Amelia with me and left without saying a word to either of them. "Hey, what are you going to do about the window? How embarrassing. Both of you are so unstable." I heard Benjamin and Abigail shouting behind us, but I didn't care anymore. Holding Amelia's hand tightly, I called my parents. "We're coming over. We might need to stay for a while." Mom immediately agreed. "I'll protect you, Amelia. Grandpa and Grandma are waiting for you, and Grandma said she's making your favorite meal tonight." Seeing Amelia's tense expression soften slightly was a relief. I had spoken to my parents about Abigail and Benjamin before. That's why they welcomed us without hesitation. When we arrived at my parents' home, they greeted us as if nothing had happened, a gesture I was deeply grateful for. In front of Amelia, they didn't ask any questions, and I couldn't have been more thankful for that. As Amelia helped Mom in the kitchen, just as I had expected, Benjamin called. Making sure Amelia would not hear, I stepped outside to take the call. "Let's get divorced." Amelia had also said I should get divorced, and now that Benjamin's affair with Evelyn had come to light, I no longer had any doubts. "Living with you two has been suffocating," Benjamin said, sounding eager to move forward. Normally, being the one who was cheated on, I could have pursued alimony or child support in court, but I wanted to sever ties with them as quickly as possible, so I chose not to make any claims for compensation or support. "Come to the courthouse tomorrow at 12 p.m. Sign the divorce papers, and it's done. Don't even think about saying you've changed your mind. I've already promised Evelyn we'll be together." Hearing Benjamin blatantly declare his plans to move in with Evelyn left me speechless. Without saying another word, I hung up the phone. Just one more day to endure. Mom, your work phone is ringing. Amelia called out from behind me. Turning around, I saw her standing in the doorway, holding my work phone and waving it at me. Hurrying over, I took the phone and saw the name displayed. Evelyn Jones. Evelyn Jones. That name Benjamin had mentioned. His mistress. And she was the marketing department employee who joined my company this year. I remembered being present at a recruitment interview since I worked in HR, sharing the same last name as Oliver, whom I respected deeply, and the executive director, Henry Jones, had naturally caught my attention. I had even formed a positive impression of her as someone serious and meticulous in her work. But to think she could have an affair so easily. People really can't be judged by appearances. After all, I hadn't even noticed Benjamin's affair. I hadn't known that Benjamin's company and mine had business dealings either. I wondered if Benjamin realized Evelyn was a coworker of mine. I laughed bitterly at my own naivety, thinking I lacked the ability to judge people properly, an essential skill in HR. Could she be calling to apologize for the affair? I honestly didn't want to talk to Evelyn, but the call wasn't ending. Resigning myself, I decided to answer. Hello, this is Jones from the marketing department. I need your help. Evelyn's voice trembled as if she were about to cry, and I felt a twinge of conflicting emotions. Is something wrong? I decided to hear her out. Though I couldn't bring myself to truly care about her problem. Her issue was that a subcontractor she managed was persistently stalking her. She had asked her supervisor to reassign the account, but her request was denied. The manager said things like, "You should be grateful you're getting attention even if you're not good at your job," or "Complain after you've proven yourself capable." Isn't that way of thinking outdated? Yes, it is. While I agreed with what she said, I couldn't sympathize with her, knowing she was Benjamin's mistress, and my response came out cold and detached. He even knows things like my high school and my birthday. It's really creeping me out. That does sound frightening. Now that I think about it, Benjamin did say he and Evelyn went to the same high school. Did she bring it up herself to get on his good side? If she were truly his mistress, it would be easy to imagine such suspicions. I've been so scared I can't even sleep at night. I told my manager, but nothing has changed. So I wanted to ask if there's any way to transfer quietly. Is she really distressed? How much of this is even true? No matter what, I couldn't shake the filter through which I saw her as Benjamin's mistress, and I found it hard to take her words seriously. Why me? My honest feelings slipped out. What? Why don't you talk to your manager? I wanted to end the call as soon as possible. Otherwise, I feared I might lose my temper and yell at someone much younger than me. But Evelyn didn't back down. Chloe, during my job interview, you were kind to me when I was nervous. I don't know who else I can trust. Is that how she won over Benjamin? By crying to him. I took a deep breath to calm myself. Then I quietly said, I know about your affair with Benjamin. We're getting divorced tomorrow. Benjamin's excited because he thinks he'll get to be with you. I'm sure he'll protect you from that subcontractor too. My voice shook near the end, but I managed to say it all without losing control. What? Wait a minute. Benjamin White. That's him. He's the one stalking me. Just as I was about to hang up, Evelyn's panicked voice rang out. What? What does she mean? Benjamin openly declared he's having an affair with you. That's absolutely not true. I have a fiancé, for goodness sake. Chloe, I'm sorry to say this, but Benjamin White is such a nuisance that I've even considered suing him. Honestly, divorcing him is the right move. I instinctively felt she was telling the truth. At the same time, I couldn't help but pity Benjamin for his inflated self-perception. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed you were his mistress. I apologize for Benjamin causing you trouble, and for not taking your concerns seriously when you confided in me. I sincerely apologized to Evelyn. It's okay. I never imagined you were married to that awful man. Chloe, you have terrible taste in men. Believe me, I know. All I could do was laugh bitterly. Refocusing, I addressed her request for a transfer. From HR's perspective, the best way to handle this quietly is to wait until the regular transfer period and submit a request then. Can you hang on for another 6 months? That's impossible. Fair enough. I'm sorry. Evelyn's quick response left me apologizing again. I didn't want to, but I'll have to ask my dad for help. Your dad? Wait, what? Yes, I've been trying to make it on my own without relying on him, so I haven't told anyone. Evelyn revealed that she was the executive director's daughter. By the way, is your decision to divorce Benjamin because of me? Even if it was just a misunderstanding, I'd feel bad if my involvement caused it. Evelyn's thoughtfulness prompted me to admit that I would have divorced Benjamin even without the affair. I also told her about my plans to meet Benjamin at noon tomorrow to sign and submit the divorce papers. And with that, I ended the call. Mom, we're starting the barbecue. When I returned to the living room, Amelia waved at me with a big smile. You must be hungry. Let's eat a lot. I couldn't forgive Benjamin or Abigail for everything they'd done, but learning that Benjamin's supposed affair was just a ridiculous misunderstanding eased my heart a little. The next day, after leaving Amelia with my parents, I headed to the meeting place with a light step. Benjamin had already arrived, and Abigail was standing beside him. We silently signed the divorce papers and submitted them immediately. I was surprised at how quickly the paperwork was processed, as if ending a marriage was the easiest thing in the world. Well, that's it, we're strangers now. Hurry up and marry that young woman, and be happy for once. Benjamin let out a faint sound. Evelyn. Standing before us were Evelyn and another man, both with serious expressions. What? I get to meet Evelyn so soon? Abigail exclaimed with excitement, only to be met with a piercing glare from the man beside Evelyn. I hadn't expected Evelyn and the executive director to be waiting, and my nerves skyrocketed, though I wasn't at fault. The fact that Benjamin's idiotic behavior had hurt the executive's daughter was undeniable. I stepped forward and bowed my head. Executive Director, I deeply apologize for the trouble Benjamin has caused Evelyn. What? How do you and Evelyn know each other? And what do you mean? Executive Director. Abigail looked utterly confused, while Benjamin stood frozen with a stiff expression. Hey, I heard you've been stalking my daughter. What exactly were you thinking? Explain yourself. The executive director closed in on Benjamin with a ferocious demeanor. And apparently, you bought Evelyn's personal information from our HR manager for $500. Quite a bargain, huh? Are you kidding me? The executive looked as though he was about to knock Benjamin out. What? Are you serious? I couldn't believe Benjamin had been that stupid. I was beyond disgusted. Being married to him was utterly humiliating. At the same time, I was deeply disappointed in the HR manager who had sold Evelyn's personal information for a mere $500. It seemed like there wasn't a single decent man around me. Both deserved severe consequences. Without my asking, the executive assured me that he had already taken strict action against them. First, he informed Benjamin's company about Benjamin's stalking of Evelyn. The company, wanting to salvage the situation, pleaded for forgiveness by agreeing to terminate Benjamin, and promised to cut all ties with the executive's firm. And so, you're fired as of today, the executive declared. But I need to support Mom. How can you be so heartless? Heartless? Look who's talking. No one paid attention to Benjamin's complaints except Abigail, who looked at him with concern. And as for the HR manager who sold Evelyn's information, he's also been terminated. Now, Chloe, I have a request for you. Yes, what is it? I wondered what he could possibly want. When he spoke, I was utterly shocked. I'd like you to take over as the new HR manager. What? I was speechless. But I'm just a contract employee. That's right, I was in my second year as a contract worker. How could I possibly be considered for a managerial position? But the executive smiled warmly and nodded firmly. Everyone recognizes your meticulous work ethic. I've had high hopes for you from the start. What was he talking about? I must have had a bunch of question marks floating over my head. The executive smiled and said, "You used to work with Oliver Jones, didn't you? He's my nephew." Really? To think that my respected mentor Oliver was related to both the executive director and Evelyn. It made me feel deeply that joining this company was truly meant to be. By chance, Oliver came here with my brother on the day of your interview. The moment he saw me, he insisted I hire you. He wouldn't take no for an answer. I had applied to this company because of the shared last name with Oliver, but to think he had been supporting me behind the scenes here as well, it made me want to see him again. By the way, Oliver also said he hopes you'll take on the HR manager role. Why did he have so much faith in me? I couldn't figure it out, but I felt a deep gratitude and a desire to live up to the trust he had placed in me. Understood. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you. Chloe, I believe you'll lead this company in the right direction as HR manager. I'm counting on you. We shook hands firmly. 2 years passed. Benjamin struggled to find work and grew disillusioned with society. He and Abigail moved to a rural town, scraping by day to day. As for us, Mom, dinner was delicious as always. Thank you. Amelia is now 17. Even after the divorce, she continued attending that prep school and was accepted into her first choice high school. This was all thanks to the executive director, who promoted me to HR manager when I was still just a contract employee. And even more so, it was thanks to my former supervisor, Oliver. I felt an overwhelming urge to thank him, so I called the number he had given me when I left my old job. He didn't answer, but later he sent me a message. "You've graduated from me. Hold your head high and keep moving forward." Yes, I'll live with my head held high. I made that promise to the sky. Mom, I think I want to become a pediatrician. I want to show kids that a bright future is possible and help them achieve it as a doctor. Hearing Amelia's dreams become more concrete filled me with excitement. Being beside such a strong, determined daughter made me want to work even harder. As HR manager, I'll do my best to make our workplace one where people can thrive and enjoy their work. Let's both do our best. With our respective goals in mind, Amelia and I will continue supporting each other as we move forward together.
Everyone has one or two secrets they'd rather keep hidden. I'm no exception. Back in the day, I was quite a wild child, although now I've become a demure and unassuming woman. Losing my parents at 15, I quickly went astray and joined a gang of troublemakers. I gathered some of the girls from the gang and formed a ladies' group. Thanks to being forced to learn wrestling by my dad since childhood, I was known locally for my overwhelming strength, surpassing even the boys. My life in that world came to an end after meeting a certain person. But living such a life, it seems you inevitably accumulate some lingering issues. My name is Nancy. Now 35, I live as an ordinary housewife, working at a local supermarket. With my light makeup and quiet demeanor, no one would guess that I once wore flashy makeup and rode around on motorcycles. Yes, I was a member of a delinquent group and the leader of a ladies' gang. But then, I met my husband, Joshua, and everything changed. It all started 10 years ago, during a clash with a rival gang, when Joshua unexpectedly intervened. That gang used to start fights at every gathering. One day, a particularly fierce brawl broke out. Joshua joined in to save his brother, a member of the rival gang. As members of both groups were falling, Joshua and I were the last ones standing. I remember Joshua laughing at his mistake, realizing his brother wasn't even there. His dignified appearance somehow struck me, and I found myself speaking to him. "Hey, you're pretty cool." "Me? Really? Looking like this? You must have some strange tastes. Were you calling out for someone named Noah? Did you find him?" "No, it turns out my brother wasn't here." That's how our slow, private conversation began. Joshua's brother, it seems, was an irredeemable delinquent. Joshua had even taken up boxing, trying to reform him. Joshua himself admitted he couldn't stand to ignore wrongdoing. He struck me as a man brimming with a sense of justice. Through our conversation, we grew close. Over time, we met more often and it became clear that we had feelings for each other. But back then, Joshua despised delinquents. Despite our mutual attraction, my involvement in the delinquent world prevented our relationship from progressing. Finally, Joshua said that if I left the gang for good, he'd want to be with me. Tired of the senseless fights, I took the opportunity to leave the group. We started dating and got married 5 years later. The group I was part of got disbanded by a rival faction 2 years after I left. After marrying Joshua, I completely transformed into a calm and graceful woman. But recently, our peaceful life was threatened by a certain neighbor. Joshua's sister, Sonia, and her husband. One day, as I was about to see Joshua off to work, the doorbell rang. "Who could that be?" "I'll check." The next moment, Joshua looked surprised. "Sonia." He mentioned his sister, whom I knew. I had met her once at a family dinner. "Hey Joshua, we've moved next door starting today. Please take care of us." "Hello, I'm Tony, Sonia's husband." "Well, looking forward to your cooperation." "You are." The two of them started off with a disrespectful attitude. But since one was Joshua's sister, I couldn't be too confrontational. We get along well with the in-laws, so I didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. And it turns out, Tony was the person who lured Joshua's brother, Noah, into the delinquent world. They both went to the same high school and were a year junior to Joshua. Joshua turned 34 this year, so they must be 33. Sonia, 3 years younger than Joshua, should be 31. "Joshua, too bad about your brother, huh?" "Tony, I don't care about Noah anymore." "Even you." Joshua was visibly angry. His brother had passed away due to a fight. Joshua's brother and sister apparently never got along well. Sonia felt neglected in favor of her brother and developed a rivalry, which eventually extended to Joshua as well. Joshua once mentioned how difficult it was to deal with his sister, preferring to dote only on his brother. And like me, Sonia was also a former member of a delinquent group. Unlike her voluntary involvement, Noah was forcibly recruited by Tony. Seeing his siblings' transformation, Joshua probably grew even stronger in his sense of justice. As the three glared at each other, I spoke up from behind Joshua. "Joshua, you need to leave for work soon." "Ah, right." Running away, Joshua? Remember, I haven't forgotten that you laid hands on me. That was because you attacked Noah. All right, both of you, enough. We're done here. With Sonia's words, Joshua left for work, still unresolved. And at the same time, the bell tolling the start of Sonia and her husband's harassment began. An hour after Joshua left for work, the doorbell rang. But when I checked, no one was there. An hour later, there was a loud noise at the entrance as if something was violently placed there. When I looked, there was a heap of cardboard boxes dumped in front of the door. What's this about? No one was around. So I decided to ignore it and went back inside. Then, I heard a small popping sound from the balcony. I hurried over and found 3 broken eggs scattered. We live in an apartment on the corner, next to the room Sonia just moved into. This means the harassment likely came from Sonia's room, as there are no neighbors on one side and it's too high for someone from below. Angry, I confronted my next-door neighbors. Hey, is that you? What do you want, showing up like this? Sonia greeted me with an irritable demeanor. Is this your idea of a prank? Throwing eggs on our balcony? It had to be Sonia or her husband. The angle only made sense from Sonia's balcony. But Sonia glared at me, replying, "What? Don't be absurd, lady. Lady. You got proof we did it? Make false accusations and I'll call the cops." Despite being a former gang member, her reliance on the police in such a situation seemed second-rate to me. I have no proof. But the way the eggs are scattered, they could only come from your balcony. I tried to remain calm. But Sonia kept glaring and arguing back. Proof? That's weak. Hey Tony, the lady next door is complaining. Hearing this, Tony joined in. Hey. Just because you're Joshua's wife doesn't mean you'll get any special treatment. If Sonia was second-rate, Tony's words were no better. He might think he's intimidating, but to me, it's not frightening at all. I could feel my old self stirring. But I didn't want to revert to my past. So, I played the role of a meek, unassuming woman and said quietly, "Please, don't raise your voice." Inwardly, I wanted to deliver a roundhouse kick right then and there, to snap that foolish neck. But having reformed after meeting Joshua, I didn't want to throw away all my efforts for something like this. Seeing my reaction, they both burst into laughter in front of me. Haha, so you're Joshua's wife? I thought you'd be something special, but you're just a dull woman. Weak. Tony was giving you too much credit. At the family dinner, you seemed like a real introvert. A kick alone won't suffice. I might need to dislocate a joint or two. Trying to control my rising anger, I was told, "Go on, leave." And the door was closed on me. I stood there, staring at the closed door. I pondered telling Joshua, but knew that even if he spoke to Sonia, they'd just feign ignorance. It would only result in more harassment and frustration for me. So, I decided against it. The next day, and the day following, the harassment from Sonia and her husband continued. It always began after Joshua left for work. Who dumped this garbage at our doorstep? It must be those two. As I was about to leave for work at the supermarket, the door got stuck halfway, blocked by a bag of garbage. I reluctantly took it to the disposal area and then headed to work. 5 hours later, I returned home to find, "This is unbelievable!" There was a cardboard box in front of the door, arranged like a table. On either side of the box, lit candles were placed. And in the center, a vase with flowers was set. On the door above, a photo of me, taken who knows when, was stuck. They were mocking me as if I was deceased. Furious, I was about to kick the cardboard away when Joshua called from behind. "Nancy?" Startled, I turned around to find Joshua, who had come home from work. "You were an hour early?" "I got off work early today." "What's all this?" Joshua was also surprised at the sight in front of the door. We quickly cleaned up the cardboard and candles from the shared hallway and went inside. There, I told Joshua everything that had happened. "So, it's likely Sonia and her husband. But we don't have any proof, so even if we confront them, they'll just deny it." After a moment of thought, Joshua had an idea. "Let's buy cameras. One for the balcony and one for the entrance. Especially hidden well at the entrance." I agreed with Joshua's suggestion. There was a limit to how much more we could endure. We immediately purchased cameras online. We had the cameras delivered to Joshua's workplace to avoid suspicion. "For now, we'll just have to endure until the cameras arrive. Then we can retaliate with evidence." Understood. So, I bore the harassment from Sonia's house for the next couple of days. For most people, endurance means being unable to fight back due to lack of strength or fear. But for me, it was different. I was holding back the urge to retaliate. In a world where using force was permissible, I would have already pulverized those two. Having the ability but not being able to use it was incredibly frustrating. 3 days later, Joshua came home with the cameras. "Any trouble since?" "The usual. Today, they even threw a fish head onto the balcony." "Let's set up the cameras right away. Put one behind the air conditioning unit on the balcony, aiming at Sonia's balcony. We'll hide another near the fire extinguisher by the entrance." The day after installing the cameras, Sonia's antics started again as Joshua left for work. I monitored everything through a recording app. Sure enough, the two of them started their antics. I silently observed and left for work when it was time. 2 hours into my shift at the supermarket, Sonia lined up at my register. Well, if it isn't my sister-in-law." I silently scanned the items. It was clear from Sonia's tone she knew it was me. Her demeanor dripping with condescension. "Aren't you a bit cold for a cashier? Shouldn't you be more hospitable? Come on, give me a discount on this." Other customers were lined up behind Sonia, watching our interaction with concerned expressions. "Hey, I'm not a scarecrow, you know." A middle-aged man in line spoke up to Sonia. "Hey, can't you see she's uncomfortable?" Sonia whirled around, glaring fiercely. "Shut up! It's none of your business." The man seemed completely deflated by Sonia, who suddenly yelled at him. The man shrank back and left the line. I then addressed Sonia for the first time. "Ma'am, if you continue to behave inappropriately, I'll have to call security." I spoke in a calm but icy tone. Perhaps mindful of the others watching, Sonia retorted. "Geez, it's just a joke." "Ah, so disappointing." And left the store, abandoning her items halfway through the transaction. The other customers stared in astonishment. My anger was just about to boil over. When I returned home after work, there was a notice on the door. The note on the door read, "Useless cashier." "That's it. I can't take it anymore." I ripped off the note in frustration and waited anxiously for Joshua to return. After Joshua got home, we reviewed the footage from the cameras. It clearly recorded Sonia and her husband's misdeeds. "Now we can fight back." "All right, let's go now." Anger filled Joshua's eyes. When we rang Sonia's doorbell, Tony answered. "You two again? What do you want this time?" Sonia appeared behind him. "What do you want, Joshua?" The two of them asked lazily. We finally began our counterattack. You too. As I started to speak, Joshua stopped me and stepped forward. Nancy, let me handle this. Sonia, and you, Tony. If you harass us any further, it won't end well for you. Joshua's voice was low and menacing. Tony retorted. What? You want to fight? Do you even have proof we did anything? Making baseless accusations like before. Before Tony could finish, Joshua started playing the video saved in the recording app. What this is? Our video capturing your wrongdoings. We had to install cameras because your harassment was too much. This silenced the usually talkative pair. Tony. Sonia, showing a hint of panic, turned to Tony. Tony, frowning deeply, glared back at us. Damn it, you got us this time. The trouble started from your end, remember? I said with a serious face. Tony retorted. So, we settle this with force, huh? Wait there, Joshua. I'm calling someone. Call whoever you want, we'll be ready. Joshua stood firm, undeterred. As the situation escalated, Tony desperately pleaded into the phone. William, I need backup, now. His tone was completely different from the bravado he showed us, repeatedly begging for help. After hanging up, he turned back to us. Get ready. William, the most notorious guy around here, is on his way. He smirked at us. Convinced of his imminent victory, but relying on someone else's strength showed his true cowardice. Why don't you confront us directly? Ha, keep talking. I know your strength well. I called a special guest this time to ensure you both feel real terror. What a pitiful sight it was. No matter how much they threatened, neither Joshua nor I felt any fear. You must be too scared to even speak, the quiet and meek Nancy, right? Sonia taunted me with a condescending tone. 5 minutes later, the much bragged about William arrived. However, he looked surprised when he saw us. William, over here. Long time no see, William. Sonia and Tony were visibly excited, having high expectations of him. But their expectations were quickly shattered. What's going on here? Indeed. Long time no see, Will. My calling him Will left Sonia and Tony with puzzled expressions. Joshua also greeted him. It's been a while, Will. The couple looked even more confused by this interaction. Confused, Tony asked. What's this? How do you know William? As Tony spoke with sweat on his forehead, Will looked back and forth between us. I simply said to him, Will, let's not do this, okay? Hearing this, an angry Tony retorted, Don't joke around. William, please, do something. Please. Sonia and Tony were frantic, unable to grasp the situation. But then Will addressed them. Hey, don't tell me you messed with Nancy? His question left the couple momentarily stunned. So, what if we did? Tony answered hesitantly. Furious, Will shouted. Idiots! Don't you know who you're messing with? His rebuke left them standing frozen. They clearly had no idea what was going on. Seeing this, I turned to Joshua and said, Hey Joshua, can I revert to my old self from 15 years ago, just for now? Instead of Joshua, it was Will who turned and responded. Nancy, please don't. If you do something to them, it might end up more than just an injury. What? You're giving me orders now, Will. No, I didn't mean it like that. Seeing the special guest they called for help now humbly apologizing to me, Sonia and Tony were bewildered. What's happening here? Their faces turned pale as Will spoke. Do you two know about BBN? Well, yes. It's famous. It stands for Black Butterfly Nancy, right? The nickname of the former leader of a ladies' group. That's right. And this lady here is Nancy herself. No way! Really? What? Both lost their bravado in an instant. Continuing, Will said, Back then, I led another delinquent group. But we were decimated by Nancy's group. She could take down 30 people by herself. Sonia and Tony now looked at me fearfully. It made sense. They'd been harassing someone who they thought was inferior, only to find out she was the leader of a ladies' group they themselves had once belonged to. I didn't know. Nancy is practically a legend. We joined the group 6 months after you left. As Sonia said, she and Tony had joined the group half a year after I had left. Will had been scouted by me and stayed in the group even after my departure, and looking after Sonia and Tony as their senior. He left the group just before it was decimated by a rival group. By that time, Tony had taken over as the leader, and was the last leader before its downfall. Before you ruined it, it was an invincible group. You can't match Nancy. That. How could this? Tony was increasingly cornered and distressed by Will. Well, the group that took you down is now the strongest in New York State. But if Nancy was still active, she would still be the strongest. Hearing this, Sonia and Tony collapsed, their spirits broken. Seeing this, Will turned to me and apologized. Please forgive them for my sake. Watching Will apologize, Sonia and Tony had completely lost their will to fight. They never imagined their call for help would backfire this way. All right, but you'll have to settle your dues properly. I glared at the two of them and said, Ah! They let out a short scream. For 1 month, you'll clean this apartment and our balcony that you dirted. If you skip even 1 day, I won't be so forgiving next time. Okay. Sonia, completely intimidated, managed to stutter out her agreement. Tony, unable to speak, just kept nodding frantically. Watching them, Will commented, No one can really stand up to Nancy. Hearing this, the silent Joshua finally spoke. But I hate delinquents. If Nancy hadn't reformed, I wouldn't be here. Looking down a bit, Joshua said softly, and I peered up at him. Don't worry. I won't show that side of me again. Will burst into laughter at this scene, and we all ended up laughing together. Will and Joshua knew each other because the three of us had met after I left the group. We bumped into Will while on a date and had tea together. Well, now that's settled, why don't you come over for dinner, Will? We three left Sonia and Tony slumped by the entrance and headed to our apartment. Before entering, Joshua added, Sonia, you're my sister, so I'll let this slide just this once, but there won't be a next time. Watching him, I wondered if he too was hiding the same fighting spirit as us. From that day, the harassment from Sonia and her husband completely stopped. As promised, they continued cleaning our balcony and the common areas of the apartment. Though just delinquents doing chores, other residents sometimes looked at them curiously, but that soon stopped. After a month, Sonia and her husband left the apartment without a word. Even Joshua, their blood relative, didn't know where they went. They probably left, feeling awkward about staying in the same place. We had no reason to get involved further and thought they finally made a wise decision. Finally, we had our peaceful life back. Though neighborhood troubles are common, I never thought I'd be directly involved. At least it was resolved amicably. I have a past I'd rather keep hidden. Joshua has kept it secret all this time. I'm not ashamed of all my past, but I have reflected on my mistakes. I just want to cherish my life with Joshua now. And I hope to live without ever showing my true nature to anyone again. That's all I'm thinking about now.